Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the After Dark Show. I am Don Rogers. I am really honored this week to have a guest with me named Karin Wilkinson. She is the author of a book called Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest. Karin is a lifelong experiencer of ET interaction and paranormal activities. And she's going to start off by hopping in and telling us what her book is about. And then her and I are going to pick some of the topics that I've seen her discuss in past interviews and really get into some of the interesting aspects about ETs and the paranormal. So, with that being said, thank you for coming on, Karin. How are you? And if you'd love to just jump into your book.
Well, thanks, Don. It's a pleasure and honor to be here with you today and tonight. And just really happy to be here. Yeah, the book is Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest, and it is an account of my lifelong experiences, what I've experienced, what I've learned about these entities, how I was able to stop it, who and what they are, and my thoughts on what's coming up and what I think is going to happen. And what their goals are, what I personally experienced and what I personally saw that they're what they want, what they're looking for. And it's published through L.A. Marzulli, and it's available exclusively at lamarzulli.com. That's LAMARZULLI.com. Or if you're looking for it, you can just go to my website, which is KarinWilkinsonAuthor.com, and it shows up there too. And I'll give you all those links, or you can find me on social media under all of those places. So sometimes it can be hard to find because we're not in your traditional Amazon stores or anything like that at the moment. So, but we just came out with the book in October, so we're just kind of starting to get it rolling now. But that's the general background of the book, and how it came to be was just through my relationship with L.A. Marzulli and doing an interview with him, which is in his movies on the UFO phenomenon. He's got a series of 10 movies, and I think I'm in the fourth, sixth, and 10th of those movies if you want to see more of me and my story.
That's amazing. Thank you. And like I had said right off the top, you're like a lifelong experiencer, right?
Yeah.
I know myself, I just started having my reawakening. I've always been aware of the paranormal, but never deeply into it. Last fall I started having some crazy super soldier nightmares, and it just all kind of came through that. But my very first interaction with anything of the paranormal was when I was about 5. But yours are even younger than that, weren't they? Like,
Oh,
can you
absolutely. Yeah.
can you talk about your first encounters? Like,
Absolutely, sure. When I was little, even before I remember the actual encounters happening, I remember the Nordics. They were what people call a Nordic type non-human alien entity. They look somewhat human, but they have very large eyes, probably twice the size of ours. They're very tall and thin. They had sort of this translucent hair, which really came across as almost blonde or clear. And they scared me, obviously, at such a young age. And so at around, 2, 3, 4 years old, I was terrified of anyone who looked like that. And I had a lot of family members who looked similar in that they had blonde hair, blue eyes, or fair skin. And no one could understand, because obviously at that age, you're not vocalizing those things. And then I remember from about 4, 5 years, 6 years old, and it's all, we'll say 5 for the just for the sake of giving a specific year. That's when the memories really start to cement for me as far as the actual abduction scenario when they would come to take me. And I can go into an explanation of that for your listeners if you'd like, if that's
yeah, I'd actually love to hear it because I can compare it to mine. And
oh
that's one
sure.
of the things I love about doing these interviews is I get a little annoyed with this community because everybody's like, "Oh, your story's not like mine. You're wrong."
Yeah,
But
that's not the case.
can't
Exactly.
you
I
can't
love that everyone has their own stories and their own histories to share. And I don't disparage anyone whose story is different from mine. The fact that people can come forward and share their stories takes a lot of courage. And I applaud that for anyone who's willing to come forward. And so I don't believe everyone has to believe the way I do or feel the way I do about it. I know from my personal experiences how I feel and what's worked for me. And I certainly don't push that on anyone, but I do appreciate everyone's personal experiences and when they try to share them because that's hard to do.
I completely agree. And like that, it's not even my catch line or quote. I don't even recall who said it, but it was like a lot of these things like, oh, your story is not like mine. Well, that's like asking a World War II veteran to tell you the same story as somebody that was fought in the Middle East. Their stories are going to be nothing alike. Just because they were both soldiers doesn't mean it happened the same way, right?
Exactly. And but if you're in the same platoon, maybe things did, and so there are going to be similarities and there are going to be differences along the way. I have talked to and met with and emailed with and messaged with so many people whose stories were almost the same as mine. I
Mm-hmm.
have had women write to me say, I just read my life story when I read your book. People write to me and say, I don't feel like I'm alone anymore. Thank you for writing this. I get so much of that type of messaging from people, which has really been the true blessing of this book, because we're able to start conversations about it, making it okay to talk about something that's very highly stigmatized. If you want to talk about these things, you're called crazy, you're a lunatic, or you're lying, this can't be real, it's demonic delusion. No, those things are not true. This is real stuff happening to real people all over the world, every country, every place you can imagine. I hear from people who have the same types of experiences that I have had. And yes, there's going to be differences here and there, but we're all experiencing similar things. And to know that you're not alone in this, that you're not crazy, has just been so cathartic and helpful for people and for myself. So that's been the real blessing of doing this, and being able to share. So on that note, I will say, if anyone listening does want to share your story, I don't share anyone's stories. They're not mine to share. It's just our opportunity to share together. You can reach out to me through my website. There is a contact page, and that just goes straight to my inbox, and I will read that. And, if you want me to get back to you, I will. I do try to get back to everyone as best I can. Sometimes we miss one here or there, but it's our goal, my goal, to get back to everyone. That being said, I'll go back to kind of what it was like when I was little. It didn't matter where I was, they would find me. Um, I could be at home, at a grandparent's house, at a friend's house, at a sleepover. It didn't camping. It didn't matter where I was. Um, I used to try to find places to hide. And, I had a sibling who, here I'm 5 years old having a conversation with a sibling about where I'm going to hide. And the sibling's telling me, it doesn't matter where you hide, they can see us through the house. Little kids having these conversations back in the 60s and 70s when nobody was talking about these things, you know, and we didn't have vocabulary to say who and what they were either. We didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what was happening to me. All I knew was what these entities were telling me, and that I didn't have a good way to talk to my parents, friends, family, school, whatever, about what was happening to me, because I didn't have vocabulary for it. I didn't know what UFOs and aliens were. I didn't, we kind of knew some of that stuff was starting to come into the news a little bit, but not really. It was still the stuff of science fiction, and it was way out there. And a 5-year-old doesn't have access to those things, especially back then. We didn't have all the internet and podcasts and shows and things to listen to. But um, when I was little, it would usually start in the middle of the night. If there was someone else in the room with me or in the house, they would be put in such a deep sleep type state that I couldn't rouse them. I could yell, I could scream, I could kick, whatever. It wouldn't wake anyone up. I would feel a change, feel a presence in the room, feel an evil in the room, feel that terror come over me, wash over me. And when I was opening my eyes, because most of the time I was closing my eyes tight and putting my covers over my head, but when I did see them, there would be at least two, sometimes more, the short, typical gray aliens that people talk about seeing. These are the bulbous heads with the black eyes that they don't look like eyes. They just look like a screen. They don't, they don't move. They're very big heads with a very thin neck, just like kind of a slit where the nose and the ears would be. Very thin, spindly arms and legs, very short. Some of them didn't smell very good. Some of them had an odor to them, like a sulfur, dead animal excrement kind of smell. But not all of them. And there would be sometimes there'd be a light coming through a window. I don't remember that all the time, but sometimes there would be. Sometimes if it was in the countryside, the crickets and cicadas would just get quiet. And they would put me into a state of what I call waking paralysis, where I was wide awake, but I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, I couldn't yell out. couldn't do anything, and I would be levitated off of my bed. And this would be accompanied by like this low vibrational hum that would just go from low to lower to lower. And my body felt like it was just going into bazillion pieces, almost like it was made of ball bearings or just little pieces. And I would be taken up through a ceiling or out through a closed window. And I remember seeing all the details of the ceilings of the different houses, things like bugs in the lamp or curls in the wallpaper or what the paint looked like, or this stucco-y weird popcorn finish on a ceiling, or just the little squares in a screen, just things that when you get right up close to it, watching things in the house get further and further away. And at that point, generally I would go into a sleep state during most of the time during transport. And I would wake up, sometimes I would wake up on an exam table and they would be doing, they didn't tell me what they were doing to me. They weren't, it wasn't like a doctor would be with a little kid nowadays, and I was terrified. I've been kidnapped from my own bedroom at that point against my will. So I'm terrified. Sometimes it looked like big x-ray machines. Sometimes there were needles involved. Um, just they would examine every single part of my body at different times for who knows what reasons. Sometimes I would wake up at these banks of elevators, and it's, sometimes I remember that we would go down steps or go down this descending hallway and end up at these doors. And they were different locations. Get in these elevator type doors and just go down and down and down. And then I got on what I would call the sideways elevators, because back then I didn't have anything to compare that to. So they seemed like an elevator that just went from side to side or up or down at an angle and went in weird directions really fast. And but it had benches in it. So I realized now that was some sort of like high-speed transport. But at the time I had no comparison because cars were loud when I was little. We didn't have electric vehicles and things like that to compare it to. So and then at that point, yeah, it just depended. It was different, it was different every time to some degree. Sometimes I would be in this really huge holding area where other people were coming in, other abductees, and I know I'm in some kind of an underground facility because we've gone down in an elevator and there's no windows, and and it's huge. I mean, it's bigger than anything you can imagine. It was like football stadiums and airports and schools and stuff all put together. It's just massive beyond belief because there are hallways and stairways and elevators and big rooms and little rooms. And, it's just so hard to describe because there's so much to it. I mean, it's so easy to get lost. So easy. I mean, trying to run away would be impossible because how do you get out, right? I mean, um, and so that's typically what would happen. And I would end up wherever they wanted me to be that particular time. I did have a handler who was with me throughout my whole life. He appeared as human. He never seemed to age. Later in life, he showed me his true form, and he appeared as what people call the reptilian type beings. He wasn't ugly and weird looking. He wasn't normal, obviously human looking, but I found him, he was very tall, very muscular build, very kind of attractive in a weird way, just not what you would expect. Not this weird sci-fi alien thing. And so that's kind of typically what would happen. They would take me back. I would wake back up in my bed. Sometimes my pajamas would be on inside out. Sometimes they'd be at the foot of the bed or in another room, or I would wake up in another room. After it was done, I was returned. I would be terrified. I would always be cold and thirsty and terrified. And, are they coming back? And sometimes I just go sleep under my parents' bed because I didn't know what to do. I'd get in trouble if I woke them up. And so I would just sleep under their bed. As a little kid, it was really hard. And I did try to talk to people about it. I tried to tell people what was going on, and let me know if you want me to break here, if you've got a question in the middle of, because I'm kind of going on.
I do actually. You've said a couple of things that line up with other interviews I've done. Um, First of all, what's your take on the idea or the concept that the Greys are actually slaves to the reptilians, right?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about having a reptilian handler, and I've had interviews that I've heard from experiencers that the Greys are actually enslaved to the reptilians.
There's a couple of different types of grays, and I do write a bit about that in my book, and then I've written more about that for L.A. Marzulli's newsletter, and I will cover that in more detail in my next book. But the grays that would come to get me, the little short ones, they're the only ones that are kind of like a cookie cutter. They're like all the same. They look the same. They have the same features. Their eyes don't move. I believe those are a sort of like an avatar, like a meat suit, for lack of a better word, created to house something. They could house AI. They could house another entity. They could house a demonic entity. Um, and I could go down that road, but that probably requires a whole nother interview to talk about Nephilim and demons and where all that comes from. So I do write about that in the book if y'all want more information, or contact me and I'll talk about it more, or we can do it on another interview. But um, yeah, that's because that's a whole nother subject to go down. But
Yeah.
so that's what I believe them to be. But so but the other entities, there are other grays, and so it's not all this Marvin the Martian walking off a spaceship. Everyone looks the same, except for these little grays, because they're different. They're not like the rest of them. They don't have mouths that open. They're very frail. They're created to carry out a purpose. They are created like a little flesh suit robot. If you think about it, we can create skin in a lab, and they're so far advanced of us. So, they can manipulate space, time, energy, and matter in ways that we don't yet understand. It doesn't mean that we won't be able to do these things someday. It just means we're not that advanced yet. And just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it doesn't exist either. If you look at our grandparents wouldn't understand a lot of what we're doing today. This conversation right here would seem like magic to them. And then, so Arthur C. Clarke says, anything that seems impossible seems like, advanced technology can seem like magic. I'm getting that quote all wrong, but I do have that quote in my book too. So for me, yeah, those seem to be a very specific type of avatar utilized. If you think about it, if they crash a ship, which we know they have, the government has said we have crash craft, we have biologics. What are they going to get? You're going to get an empty gray meat suit, because whatever's inhabiting that suit can vacate, especially if it's a demon, a demonic entity. So they'll get an empty meat suit. They're not going to get something, of value or interest beyond just some biological material that's not going to get them anything. But once I would get to wherever they were taking me, to the facilities, or then there are different types of grays that were not identical. They were all different. Some were taller, some were heavier, some were thinner, some looked more masculine, some looked more feminine. They had eyes that moved, they had faces that moved and had what looked like facial expressions, and similar to what we would do. They didn't speak to me like we speak. It was all mind speak, and mind speak is not telepathy. Mind speak is a very intentional process of saying something to someone with your mind, not reading someone's mind, not just having thoughts floating out there, but you're intentionally sending words to someone. So it's a very different, and when I was with them, it was just very easy for me to do. And I would find myself slipping into that, after, and not realizing, oh, I'm not even talking to somebody, it's not how it works here when you get back. But as a little kid, some of those things just became second nature. And they're like, she's so quiet. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't actually talking, was I? Little things like that. Um, so then the reptilian types, the gray types, there were the insectolan type entities and the Nordic types. And I really put them into those four classes. But what I did notice about all of them, A, they were all different, but B, they also seemed to kind of cross over a bit. Like there were some grays that looked more reptilian and some reptilian that looked a little more insectolan, you know what I mean? And some Nordics that I don't know, so I'm like, how many different types are there? I have no idea. There could be just thousands of different varieties and species of them. And based on my belief in the biblical prophetic narrative, I think that they do fall into these angelic categories where we have thousands of different types of angels. Then there'd be thousands of different types of fallen angels as well. And that's what I think they are.
that's something that I wanted to pick your brain about. So you've set that up wonderfully. So thank you.
Yeah.
Um, I'm of the understanding I'm not a religious person or against religion or any particular faith. I just believe there's some type of source that has created us, right? And I also believe that that's where we get a lot of our understanding and knowing from is a source consciousness. Do you believe that, as you're saying, like there's thousands of species of all of these different entities and beings and angels? Do you think we initially come from that source consciousness, all of us, or is there something else that's interfering? Like that's what I'd like to.
Yeah, I do believe that we have one creator and that we have one divine creator, and everyone has different names for him, and that's fine. And everyone goes about it different ways. I'm not a deeply religious in that I go into any organized type of, but I definitely believe the Bible is the inerrant word of God, and I believe that we have just different varieties of that all across um different societies across the world, and we're all pretty much, a lot of us are trying to say the same thing, that we have one creator. And I believe in Jesus, that he was, God walking earth as in the form of man. But and I don't expect anyone else to share my belief systems. Everyone has to find their own way and what they want and what they want to believe. So I don't push that on anyone. But yes, I do believe we all come from the same creator. And when I confronted them with this information, this is how I was able to stop them. It didn't come from a particular church. It didn't come from a particular um, person. What happened is, over the years of my, um, you know, learning more about the Bible and falling away and getting frustrated with certain organized religions and things like that, I was learning. And what I did believe and learn was that, oh, wait, we all have one creator. That means once I started to figure out who and what they were, I'm like, you have the same creator that I do. That means I can call on Jesus. I can call on my creator, and I can tell you that you have to leave me alone because I am saved by this creator. I have allowed my creator into my heart to take over and be my creator, my guide, my God. And I am his, and I am in him, and he is in me. And that means you have to leave me alone. And when I let them know that, it was like it shattered because they realized I understood who and what they were. And I knew for a fact that they couldn't touch me anymore. The spiritual realm is a very legalistic realm. The universe, God's created universe, is very legalistic. There are rules that must be followed, there are legalities that must be adhered to. And this is where my friend Vicki Joy Anderson, who's the author of the book They Only Come Out at Night, it's kind of a companion. You can buy that where you find my book. She's amazing. We do speak together often as well, because she understands that very well, and I'll share that information with you later, if you want to learn more about her. But so it's like, if you think about the old vampire lore of the days of old, that where, oh, they can't cross the threshold unless you invite them. It's the same thing. That's where that comes from. And it's across all these ancient societies and ancient texts and ancient teachings. For as far back as we can find, these things exist. And so it is just like that. You create these covenants, these agreements, these salt and blood covenants and what have you. And sometimes you don't even know you're doing it. Or sometimes someone does it on your behest, especially as a child, which is what I believe happened to me. Can I say exactly who created that covenant? No, I can't. It could have been Eisenhower when he made the agreement in exchange for technology and allowed these entities to take humans and animals and experiment on them. It could have been a Masonic grandparent who was very high up in the Masons in my family, but I don't have the specifics on who it was. All I know is that I had to break whatever covenants were made on my behalf in order to stop them. So that was a very long answer to your question, but yes, I do believe you all come from the same creator, the same source. And when confronted with that, they had absolutely agreed with me on that. So I got my 100% proof on that for me, that yes, we all have the same creator.
And you led into another thing I wanted to talk to you about. Again, awesome. Um,
Same wavelength
with
today.
that covenant agreement, you are on fire. Um, do you think that applies across most of the paranormal community? Because like I've personally interviewed and I talked to people on my Facebook and whatnot, that are having instances. There's a lady that she's shown me video of something touching her at night, right? Like I've seen it with my own eyes. It's just her security camera, and this thing is messing with her feet at night and leaving marks on her. So does the same foundational rule apply to her with something in the spiritual realm that isn't?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, whether it's showing up in a physical form, whether it's showing up as a shadow man or a hat man or any kind of these number of different things. This is where I need my friend Vicky Joy Anderson sitting beside me, because now she is the expert in this. So I won't go too far down that road because it's her expertise and not mine. But I would love to have her and I doing this together. You have an interview with her, and then after we'll do one together, because this is her area of expertise. But yes, you are absolutely right. This is where things like sleep paralysis, night terrors, shadow men, hat man, all that kind of thing, all of that falls into this category. And they can come in many forms. These, when you're talking about demonic entities or demons, which are, two different things. Things can be demonic or things can be a demon, but not necessarily either or both. Um, a demon is always looking for a body to inhabit. So if it doesn't have one, it's going to show up as a vapor or a shadow or a cloud. But if it is in something, then maybe you've got a doll moving across a room, or a piece of furniture, or a cat, or a dog, or a cow, or whatever. When you think of the Bible, when Jesus was running into demons all the time, and they'd be like, don't cast us out of the bird, they put us in the pigs. They at least wanted to go into something. They want a body to inhabit. And so that is why you get different forms. But then when you're talking about fallen angelic beings, that's a whole nother thing. But they all have the same rules that apply to them, the same rules that apply to us. So it's a very legalistic society, absolutely.
Thank you. And I'm probably going to give her an advanced screening of this because she's just being tormented. So as soon as we're
Oh,
done, I'm probably going to wait for Zoom this
yeah,
and
give
send it
her
to
my
her.
email address. Give her my
I,
email,
I will.
please. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Like I got chills right now. Um, you want to go into when you've had UFO and UAP experiences as well.
Mhm.
Um, can we get into like when that started and what those experiences were about?
Right. I mean, I've seen them, throughout my life. They seem to follow me around. I can look up in the sky and they were just there. There are different times when I've been in them or different times when I've seen them. So it depends on what part of that you want to hear about. I mean, there's a time at the beach when we were with a bunch of families. My kids were little, and we're all taking a walk after dinner. Those of us who cooked didn't have to clean, so we took the kids out for a walk. We're walking down a crowded beach in Florida. There's other people walking around. It's twilight. There's a big ball of light and about 7 to 12 little balls of light in different parts of the sky around it. One by one, they're just going up into the big ball of light and then taking off. Yeah, after it's gone. And everyone saw it. But everyone reacts differently, and everyone was kind of like, oh, did you see that? Yeah. And then we're just kind of like, oh, forget it. Then no one talked about it. Like it just leaves your head because they have this ability to just vacate, and then you don't think to talk about it. And this is what I call UFO brain fog, because it happens when they would take me. And I've talked to other abductees who've experienced the same thing, whether you're just witnessing one or whether you're being taken. It's like walking through molasses physically and mentally. So that they have this ability to just kind of put you into kind of mental and physical shackles that you can't see, and really control what you're capable of doing. It keeps you from fighting, it keeps you from running, it keeps you from paying too much attention to what's going on around you, which they don't have to do much today because no, everyone's always doing this, looking down at a phone.
Yeah.
No one, everyone's looking down. I mean, not all of us. I try to be very situationally aware, but I know that not everyone does that. And so people are missing, I think they're missing a lot. But yeah, that is a
Um,
UFO. That's a very real thing.
just before we get off of that, you just reminded me because your story is very similar to mine. When I was younger, I lived in Ontario, and we were basically right across the bay from the Meaford military base, right?
Uh,
And there was like four kids and two adults, 4 or 5 kids and two adults, and we watched almost the same thing you're talking about, except it was like 5 or 6 individual lights, and they'd kind of piss around in the sky for a bit, and then they'd go over to the escarpment, which is like hundreds of miles away, but it only took like a half a second. And then they'd go back over to by the base, and then they'd be over. And we watched this for probably close to an hour. Well, here's where it gets fun. I like we're supposed to just kind of left that in the back of my head as a childhood memory. A few months back, I talked to Preston Dennett in an interview about this. 2 days later, one of the other kids that was there goes, Dawn, it was in 93, 94, and just described what I told you. So I'm like, did I ask you that? And she's like, no. I'm like, you don't watch my show, do you? She's like, no. I'm like, do you know why you sent me that message? She's like, I don't know. And she was irritated with me about it. But
Yeah.
she was the one who had messaged me. Like, I don't know if they buzzed her and wouldn't leave her alone until she sent the message or what. But
Yeah,
I recounted the story to Dennett, and then she came into my inbox like 2 days later, and she was one of the 5 kids that was there.
that's wild. It's almost like you're remembering it triggered a memory for her, like thins the veil. I really do think there's this kind of veil between us and this other dimension. Like for if you read in the Bible, it talks about how the angels basically watch us like for sport. The word that it uses is the same word that would use, and I can't think of the word off the top of my head, for like watching in a coliseum. So think of it, there in, there's like this veil between us. And if we could open it and see what's just right here in front of us, we would be amazed. It's like the verse with Elijah and Elisha where he says, ask the Lord open his eyes so he can see, and he sees all the chariots of fire surrounding them, protecting them, because it's in this different realm. And I believe we're still dealing with that today. And so sometimes I think when something like that comes up, it thins that veil, and other people are going to remember it too, or God brought it to her mind so that you would have that. So there's all kinds of things that we just don't understand about the interactions within these realms. And it's something that we have to be very careful of too, because like I said, it's a legalistic society. And if you accidentally call on something, then you can have something that's attached to you that's going to just literally suck the life out of you and be dangerous for you and your loved ones. So I do not recommend that anyone go calling on UFOs or calling on alien beings, because I have had experiences with good angelic beings, and I have had experiences with fallen angelic beings or aliens or UFO, whatever you want to call them. And the thing is I kind of compare it to if you're walking down a dark alley and the bad guy comes up to rob you, he's not wearing a t-shirt that says, hey, I'm a robber, I'm gonna, rob everyone I see tonight. Or the pedophile doesn't go into the daycare, advertising that he's a pedophile. He goes in acting like he's the nicest guy in the world and he's there to, take care of children. Or the serial killer doesn't advertise that he's a serial killer. You know what I mean? So evil doesn't advertise. Evil tricks and deceives and comes across as beautiful and good and light and pretty and fun and handsome and endearing and everything that you want, until it's too late and you don't realize what you've let in. So I highly caution anyone, be careful, because we're not intended to be interacting with these beings. They're stronger than we are. They've been around a lot longer than we are. They know a lot more than we do. We are no match for them. And no matter what they say, you have no way to put that to the test. You can't, for they may say, I'm here as your guide, your best friend, you're this or that. If that's the truth, then God is amazing and wonderful. But there's no way to know that for sure. And are you willing to risk your friends, your family, your loved ones, yourself, your own life? It's like the snakes that look the same, but one's venomous and one's not. You really want to reach in
Yeah,
and take a chance? I don't.
yeah. No, I think that's a very valid thing to
Yeah.
say too, because like, myself, I had done some hypnotic regression, and like I didn't even know who Gabriel was before the regression, and that's who popped out as my higher self when the practitioner tried. So I woke up and I'm like, what the hell was that about? And
It's been
there were some
protected.
people that were more interested in it than I was, because I that's great if I have a fractal of Gabriel as a part of my conscious existence. That's wonderful, and it was nice to talk to him. But the person I trust myself the most is myself. My body doesn't lie to me when I know things. My body tells me the truth about when things are right and wrong. I don't need to speak to anyone else other than the person I'm attached to unabashedly in here.
Right, that makes sense, and that makes me think of the fact that, you know, how when people will see a ship in the sky or have an encounter, one of their first reactions is this intense fear. 90% of the time, it's this intense fear. And I remind people, you know, they'll show babies pictures of rattlesnakes and lions, little babies, brand new babies, and they will jump back. They instinctively know that's dangerous. We have those same instincts. And we, like you said, we have to listen. Those instincts are built into us for a reason, not just to be annoying. There's a reason that we feel that way. There's a reason that fear is instilled in us. There's a reason we run from some certain things that we can't see, but we know they're there and we know they're dangerous. So I encourage people to listen to your instincts too, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I know we got a little off topic, and that's fine
That's
because I just like um when you were saying about the underground, I've had other people that often refer to those as deep underground military or whatever. Did you notice any human type beings interacting with the E.T.s? Is like, because I've heard some people know it was just them, and then I've heard other people like Nathan Sizak, a guy I just interviewed. He's like, at some level, all alien interaction has some type of human interaction. So I didn't know if your experience was the same there or not. Because
Oh yeah, there were humans working alongside these alien entities. There were probably, as you know, there were, I don't know how many. I mean, there were so many different humans and aliens there. I would never be able to say, was it 50-50? I don't know. There were a lot of humans there. There were humans working, humans in military type uniforms, humans in what looked like lab coats, humans in what looked like weird, really plain smock and pants type outfits that were just really benign. No, nothing special at all. Um, and I know that because they utilized me and others like me who were abductees to warn them. We were used and abused in front of people, and they would say to them, you don't want this to happen to your family, your daughters, your wives, your husbands, your loved ones, what have you. Um, and for a while, I was, you know, the UFO brain fog keeps us from reaching out to them, and they're not allowed to reach out to us. And then, because I've had a lot of people ask, well, why didn't you just ask someone to help you? I couldn't, you know, and until you're there, you don't realize how overwhelming it is. But I also realized too that, you know, I understand the pressure these people were under not to talk and not to do anything. If you think about, you know, if you have this job and all of a sudden they say, hey, we want you to be on this special project. We need you to sign these non-disclosure agreements. You're going to go into this top secret stuff. That's exciting. You're getting a raise. You're maybe going to be working off site for months at a time. That is not an uncommon thing to happen in a lot of jobs, right? That's probably exactly what happened to these people. And before they know it, now they're in that position. They've signed the NDAs. Now there's no backing out. I mean, they love their families. It's the same way they kept me quiet. When I was very little, like 5 or 6 years old, they showed me my family being beheaded in front of me as a screen memory to keep me from talking. And I had a complete just mental breakdown. That's when they found me huddled in the corner of a bathroom stall at school. My mom had to come get me. She took me to the doctor, and you know, I just kept saying, I don't want them to take me. I don't want them to touch me. I didn't have vocabulary to say who they were. I couldn't say the Greys, the aliens, the reptilians, but again, what am I going to say, right? Um, and even if I did, they would have put me in a mental institution. Um, even to, you know, to this day, it's still something you have to be careful with. So at that point, I really had a break, and I kind of created two personalities. And it wasn't a complete split personality, a complete dissociative disorder, but I did dissociate from it and had a part of me that dealt with that. And then a part of me that just was everyday, fun stuff, was able to completely just have a block between the two because I couldn't live anymore under that stress. My little 5, 6 year old body couldn't take it. Um, and I literally was just rocking, sitting, holding on my knees, rocking in a corner of a bathroom, and I wouldn't talk to anyone. I wouldn't move. I wouldn't, nothing. So it's definitely something that's hard on people who this happens to, and there are a lot of ways they keep you from talking. And that's the same thing that is done in different forms of human trafficking, today that humans do to humans. So it's not something that's that unusual. It's a very persuasive tactic, especially with children, because children love their families and don't want them to be hurt and tend to believe whatever's told to them. So
I think you're onto something, and that's again in the community too. It comes through twofold. Like you're talking about the memories on the ships and stuff, and what's done. And yes, I have a few memories of my own that I don't often talk about. And one, it's because I don't want to go there and think about it. And two, it's because sociologically, they've interrelated a construct that if you talk about this shit in, pardon my language, um, in normal day to day, you're nuts. You're gaslit. You're
yep,
insane.
yep,
You're on medication. You're taken in for assessment because, like, when I first started becoming aware of my super soldier experiences in the future, which I've explained multiple times that I believe is just a split stage of my consciousness. I'm just happening to see another stage of my consciousness in my human existence. I've dealt with that. But if you try to explain that to people like a doctor or a psychiatrist or your parents,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
gonna get gassed. You've watched too many movies. Put the comic book down. Stop that. You look
right.
flat out retarded, and I hate that word. But you get called everything.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So
No,
they've got you
I'm sorry, you broke up there.
like I said they've basically got you too full because they've convinced even within our own community to gaslight each other.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there are a lot of people within the community, well-meaning people who say that they are one thing, but then they will say things like, well, see, you're not really being taken. This is demonic delusion. And to those people, I say, well, you can sit down with me and all of my friends, men and women, who have had sperm and ovum taken from our bodies, who have had implants put in and implants taken out, who have had burns and scratches and scars, not just emotional scars, but physical scars. And the people who love us, who have to support us through these things, and tell me this is demonic delusion. No way. And they're victim shaming and they're minimizing and they're pretending that this doesn't exist because they're being told to do so. And that is so wrong. And I'm trying to make this something that it's okay to talk about. I'm going to conferences. I'm going on talk shows. I'm going to different places. I'm following, L.A. Marzulli around and talking to people and just being there for people and saying, look, it's okay for us to talk about this. Whatever you have to say, I'm a safe person to talk to. I'm not going to make fun of you. I'm going to believe you. I'm going to listen to you. You don't have to believe what I'm saying. Nobody has to believe what I'm saying, but I got nothing to gain by sharing this story. I had everything to lose by sharing this story. I have everything to lose. People will call you every name in the book,
Yeah.
but that's okay because I know what happened to me. I know the difference between a memory and a dream. I know the difference between reality and delusion. This is real. This happened and it's happening to other people, and people need to wake up, be aware of it, or they're going to be tricked and fooled into believing that these are benevolent space brothers coming to save us. And anyone who believes that is going to be in so much trouble. These are not benevolent space brothers. Benevolent entities don't kidnap little children, don't decapitate animals, don't, that you've seen the cattle mutilations, you've seen, none of it, don't steal babies from the womb. And these are all things that I have seen and witnessed and personally or seen, the cattle mutilations, obviously secondhand. Those aren't benevolent actions. If you're benevolent, you can come and sit down and share the information and let us know how we can interact and help. And not just with random people like myself or you, but sit down with someone who has an impact with a leader or
Yeah.
in a way that you can broadcast that. They are very advanced. They could broadcast across every one of our streaming platforms and machines if they wanted to in a hot second. That could be done. They could break through everything right now if that's what they wanted to do, but they're choosing not to. And there's a reason,
Yeah.
because they're not benevolent space brothers.
Oh, no, like me and my partner who goes by the name Canadian Spinjaw online here. I have pictures of the day we woke up with matching injection marks right there
Oh,
with a bruise, sleeping side by side in our king size bed in our little mobile home in rural Alberta. Why did both of us wake up with needle marks in a main inner IV line?
oof. Yeah,
You tell
exactly.
me that's in my head for
Hmm.
but
You sound exactly like, well, in the fourth movie in the UFO series that Ellie Marzulli has out, it's on the abduction scenario. And Emil Juik is in that movie. He's also known as Patient 17. He had an implant removed. But you sound just like him when he'll say, I would go to sleep at night and they put locks on the outsides of his doors because they were tired of him being outside. He was a little kid. They were scared. There was a pool. They didn't want him to drown. Locks on the outsides of his windows, locks on the outsides of his doors. And somehow he would still wake up outside a locked house. He's like, explain that to me. Exactly. These are the examples, the physical examples of what's happening. How did my pajamas get on inside out? Or how did they get in
uh,
another room of the house? Or outside? Or how was I outside? These things are physical examples of the very real phenomenon that's happening to people.
I'm going to be a science nerd here for a second because I actually wrote a paper on like the concept of a holographic universe and the construction of our own. Right, everything that
Yeah.
exists in this, as we know it, is a an ion or an atom. Right, like even I'm built of atoms. Right, so if they're as far advanced as they are, they obviously would have the proper technology to be able to cause some type of molecular deconstruction of a human or a building and just pull one through the other and put it wherever the hell they want. If you slow the frequency of certain things down, they fall apart. That's how that works, right? If you slow the vibration, you can push things through things, right? It's science. It's not woo woo. This isn't a freaking movie that these people are talking about. It's literally possible. All you have to do is change the vibrational frequency. You can make an entire bridge collapse with a sound. So if that's a possibility, then yeah, you can reach through my trailer and take me and my wife out of here at your will because you have a higher technology that our government probably does, but doesn't show us, or
Exactly.
they quite obviously do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
They,
but no, I just wanted to geek out there for a second.
mhm. Yeah, no, I love
Yeah,
that. You're absolutely right. And it explains, like, I didn't know all those things until, I've always been kind of a computer geek, but I didn't know all the science or anything like that. And then when I would explain the slow vibrational hum and all that stuff, and I heard other people going, me too, exact same thing. I had so many people in agreement with me when I started describing what happened when we went through a wall or a ceiling. I started looking into it to see, is there some kind of correlation? Exactly what you just said. I don't understand it. I haven't done enough research on it, but it makes sense. I mean, we're all made up of atoms and molecules and things that can just separate and come together. And that's what it felt like was happening to my own body. And, our spirit and our soul is attached to this physical body, but just because if you lose a limb, you don't lose your soul. Do you know what I mean? So it's
I,
just because things detached, it doesn't mean that your whole thing. And I've had a near death experience, and I can tell you for sure that our personality, our soul, our spirit goes on from this physical body, and we are still the us that we know today. God has a plan for us and a place for us, and snatched me out of my body so that I didn't have to suffer while I was dying. And it was the most beautiful, love, amazing experience I've ever had. I write about that in the book too, because I don't want everything to be so dark and terrible. There's a very good light side to everything too. I mean, we're discussing a lot of the dark here, and I haven't even breached the surface of the dark that I've experienced. But there's also a lot of really good and a lot of love and light out there in God's universe, and He wants us to experience that, not this ugly darkness that is plaguing our world, and So I really hope that for people that they don't experience what I have, that they can experience the love and the light and the goodness that God has for them and not these things.
I I think that's an awesome sentiment. We've got a few minutes left. Do you want to go into the second book? And I will absolutely beg you on air to please come back because I could have talked to you for 2 more hours.
Oh, I'll definitely
Um,
come back in.
do
Yeah, I'll
you want to
definitely
go
come back.
into your second book?
Well, I
Thank you.
haven't, it's not out there yet. I'm just starting to work on it right now, but I will give everyone a hint. I write an article, monthly article for LA Marzulli's newsletter called Little Gray Lies, and you can subscribe to that. And if you read that, you'll get a feel for what the next book is going to be. Because I'm trying to dispel a lot of the myths that are out there. There just isn't, I wrote this book because I wasn't seeing a lot written from the point of view of the abductee. There are people writing for abductees. There are people writing about abductees, but there are not a lot of us who are just writing our own and doing our own research and saying, this is what happened to me and how it feels and what I found out and what worked for me and what didn't. And other abductees don't have to agree with me. It's just mine and my place in it. But it's been able to help people. And so I'm so grateful.
Oh, did you, are you still there? Oh, no.
Out there that are
Karen,
causing people kind of hiccups, a lot of like what you're doing. So you're dispelling a lot of myths. You're bringing a lot of truth to the forefront here. And I want to continue that work on my end as well. So that's what the next book will be about.
thank, yeah. And that's actually the whole reason I even started doing this because we've got a
So
few minutes. I
mhm.
started having super soldier nightmares last fall, and it went on for like 9 days. And the same thing happened. My partner had already been into her podcast deep dive, and she's like, "You have to watch something." And I'm like, "I don't even like podcasts. I didn't listen to podcasts a year ago, much less have one. Right? I thought they were dumb. Right? So finally, she gets me to watch an episode of Typical Skeptic with Arkeem Ra, who's explaining these Montauk memories. And I ended that episode in absolute shambles, just in tears, because everything this man was talking about, the way his consciousness was being taken and removed from his body and all these things, I'm like, I wasn't in Montauk, but that's what's going on. And that was the precipice, the opening I needed to start to understand a lot of what was going on around us isn't the way we're trained to believe, like, I work a 9 to 5 job and that's the only thing that exists around me, and you keep your head down and you look at your phone. Well, there's an entire freaking universe happening around us. And as soon as I got past the SSP trauma part of it, I was like, okay, now I want to know about everything.
Yeah.
So I decided to do this from an experiencer standpoint and start my podcast and talk to amazing people like you because I have questions. I just woke up. What the hell has been going on?
Oh, there's so much out there too, right? Oh, I understand that. I went through PTSD therapy after my near-death experience because it was so traumatic. And that's why I was able to start sharing this. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with all this now? I had no idea what to do. And I felt led to LA Marzulli after I prayed about it. God put that together. It was unreal how it happened. And never in a million years would anyone be able to put that together. It was all God. And after we talked, that became the center point for his fourth movie. And then he asked me, well, let's write a book together because I was already writing for his newsletter at that point. And then he didn't have time to do it. He's like, just write your book. And so it was so quick and easy to write because it's just my truth. It's what happened to me. If you sit down to write
Yeah,
what happened to you, it's the easiest thing to do is to share the truth. Lies,
yeah.
lies are impossible to keep up with. I'm sorry. I don't know anyone who could tell a lie and keep up with it. And the only way you can do something like this, it has to be your absolute truth. And it's hard because I had to share things that I never thought I would share with people. But doing that
I
gives people a voice in a way.
uh, just kind of in a playful way. I've been in terrible relationships that were built on lies, and they're freaking exhausting, and I can't do it. Like I just when I got with my partner now, the first thing we did was sat down for, I think it was somewhere between 3 and 5 hours, and just told each other, look, this is how messed up I am. This is how screwed up my life is. I've got this. I got arrested because I got in a brawl with my ex girlfriend because she threw a cookie sheet of hot. Like, we just dumped it,
Yeah, that's
right?
awesome.
And,
truth is really cool, isn't
and it's
it?
been
It's
the best.
amazing.
Yeah,
It's
it's been the
so
best
good.
relationship because in 6 years, we're getting married on August 5th. In
Oh,
6 years,
congratulations.
on August 5th, I haven't had to remember one freaking lie
I
because we
love
told each
that.
other everything.
Oh my gosh. See,
Yeah,
you should, yeah, you need to just share with the whole world. Here's how to have a successful relationship. Tell the truth. I
yeah,
mean,
just
every
from jump
relationship should
go.
tell the truth. I mean, sure, there's going to be tough
Yeah,
moments. There always are, but I'm telling you what, the truth is so easy. The truth is hard emotionally sometimes. Like this has been very hard for me emotionally, but what comes of it has been such a blessing because I get to see people set free from this every single day. And that, my friends, is totally worth it. If you just believe, you don't have to be a member of a certain organized religion. You don't have to be anything or anyone. You are already someone special. God already loves you, isn't saying go sit in this church, go be bored, go do that. Know the Bible backwards and forwards. No, God is saying, ask me to come into your heart. Do you believe in me? Do you believe I'm your creator? Cool. Then you can call on me and I'll save you from these things and you don't have to let them hurt you anymore. That's that's the secret sauce. That's the key to everything. And and you don't have to even be able to you don't have to even physically say it. You can think it, you can feel it in your heart. They sense it. It just like that, they're gone. It's so amazing, so freeing. And I just want people to have that freedom from this because it's terrifying. Anyone who's ever been through this knows how terrifying, you know how terrifying this is. And you don't have to have it anymore. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, give your friend my email address. If it's out of my depth, I will pass it on to someone who is might be able to help and we'll see what we can do because I don't like to see anyone suffer. That's a terrible thing. And we all need to help each other and be there for each other with honesty and love and truth.
that is a wonderful sentiment to end this on. Do you want to give everybody your links again really
Oh,
quick?
sure.
And I will also put them in the description. And
Sure, absolutely. My email or my website is Karin, Karin Wilkinson, Wilkinson, author.com. Then you can find links on there to my social media or to L.A. Marzulli's website, which is lamarzulli.com, which is the only place you can find the book unless you find me in person. My social media is just my name, Karin Wilkinson or Karin Wilkinson author. Look for the blue check mark. You'll know you found me. I don't know when this is going to exit. This is going to air in a couple weeks. So I think when this airs, I will be in Ohio at the Go Therefore conference, July 26th through 28th in Brookville, Ohio. I don't know between there and December what's going to happen. I've had some changes to my schedule, but in December, on December 8th, I'll be at the um, Prophecy Watchers Conference in Branson, Missouri. Um, really excited about that because I got a lot of friends in Missouri. So, yeah. So, just if you go to L.A. Marzulli's events tab, a lot of times I at the events he's at. So that's a great place I like to go to figure out where we're going to be. I love to meet people in person, talk to people in person. If you just want to sit down and talk about your experiences, pray together, whatever it is, I am I am down for it. So, um, and if you want to send me a message, just send it through my website and I will do my best to get back to you. And thank you so much, Don. I love the work you're doing. I love what you're doing. I love that you're helping people and sharing the truth. It's so incredible, so important, so amazing. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
thank you, Karen. And for everybody else that's been listening, oh, this will be out on audio a week before YouTube because I like to promote my Forbidden Knowledge Network stuff before my own channel. So it'll be out on audio next week and YouTube the week after. So, um, other than that, thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you next time. And by the way, go outside. It's lovely.